Hey everyone, hope you're all doing good. So today we are going to talk about hoisting. It's a very popular concept in JavaScript and it is asked in most of the interviews because of its usage. It's really kind of important to know if you're a JavaScript developer. So first of all, let's see the definition of hoisting. So hoisting basically means to lift something heavy from ground, sometimes using ropes or machines. So you might have seen this machine at construction sites. So what this machine basically do is it lifts heavy materials like concrete or metal from the ground and lifts it to different floors and roofs because humans cannot do it with the hands. They are too heavy. So let's see this example in JavaScript or this concept in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, first of all, before going to this concept, you need to know about declaration and initialization. So declaration is basically something like this. Like for example, I have a variable called var and a. So now I have declared this variable. So this basically means that this variable exists, but the value of this is undefined. So we don't know the value. What does initialization mean? Initialization mean basically to assign a value to it. For example, if I assign 10 to it, so this basically means now it is initialized. So this is declaration. This is initialization. Initialization can also be done something like this. So you can say the variable is declared as well as initialized. So these are the two concepts that you need to know for the hoisting. And in this video, we're going to talk about variable based hoisting, function based, and class based. So let's see the variable based first. So in variable based, let's say for example, I have a variable called var, right? And I declare it to 10. Now, if I print this variable, if I print this variable, let's say for example, a, what will happen? Let me comment this out first because we don't need it anymore. It was just for explanation purposes. So if I print this, of course, I will get uh, 10. You see, I got 10. But what if I use it before it's even declared initialized? So it was initialized on line number 11 and I'm using it on line number 9. So what will happen if I do it in this case? Well, you will get undefined. Well, the reason is because JavaScript treats this whole thing as a hoisting. So this basically means that it allows certain variables and certain you can say functions to be used before they are declared and initialized. So you cannot do this with var. So as you can see, you will get an undefined if you do it with a var. Okay, but what if we do it with a constant? So for example, if I say const a is equal to 10, right? And if I say console.log a, what will happen? Well, you will get 10, as you can see. You will get 10 because it's already declared and you don't need to worry about anything. But what if I do something like this? What will happen now? Well, you will get an error. So in case of variable, or you can say var, you don't get any error. So you will only get undefined because JavaScript behind the scenes treat this one as below. So for example, it will say something like this: var a, right? And you are printing it like this, and then it will assign it like this, and then you are printing it again. So behind the scene, all this thing is basically executed like this. So right now, if you look at this point at line number 10, it does not have any value, so you will get undefined in here. Now let's see the same example in case of const. So as I mentioned, you will get an error which will basically say you cannot use it before initialization. So you can only use it after line number 15, like below this line. So what does happen in case of const? So in case of const, it's something like this: a, and then you print it a, and then you say console.log a is equal to 10, and then you say console.log a. Now, as you can see, we are already getting an error. So let me comment this out. So what does this mean is that constant variables cannot be, you can say, cannot be declared without initializing a value. So you cannot do this with const variable. It is not allowed, and it is against the concepts of JavaScript and the syntax of JavaScript. So this is what happens behind the scene, and that is why it will give you an error when you run this code. So you won't get an error on this line. On this line, you won't get an error. But on this line, you will get an error because you are using the hoisting concept, and it won't allow you to access a variable before it's initialized and it is, you can say, declared. So if I run it again, you will see that I will get an error as expected, as I mentioned before. So now let's see the example of a let, which is the third type of third type of a variable data type. So variable and const. So const will give you an error, variable will give you an undefined. What about let? So let's see. So let is a blocked scope variable, so you cannot access it outside a block. If I declare this right here like this, I cannot access it outside or here. It will give me undefined or some error because let is a block based variable, block scope variable. So now if I run this, so I'm trying to access let variable, right? What will happen? So you will get 10 as expected because it is already declared and initialized, so you won't get any errors. What if I access it right here? What will happen now? Well, in this case, we will also get an error. So similar to the const, the let will also give you an error and will say you cannot access a variable before it's initialized. So this will only work if it was like this. So it will only work in this way. It will not work in case if you are accessing the let variable before it's declared and initialized. So what's the summary of the variable type? So if you use a var variable before it's declared, it will give you undefined. So because it is added to the global scope variable, by default JavaScript treat it as a global scope. So it will be added to the global scope as undefined if you are using it before it is initialized and declared. What will happen in the case of let and const? You will get an error because both of these are blocked scope variables. So you can only access it inside a block, and that is why they give you an error, and it will say you cannot access it before it is initialized, right? So this was basically the variable based hoisting. Now let's see the function based hoisting. So we have three different types of functions that we can create. So the first type of function is something like this. So let's say, for example, if I say um, console.log, this is from function. If I run this right here, sorry, I won't get any errors. So let me run this node hoisting.js. So if I run this, I won't get any error and I will get the expected response, which is this is from a function, and I'm calling it right here. What if I call this function above right here? What will happen in this case? Well, in this case, something unexpected will happen, which is that we saw that in case of variables, const and let will give you an error, var will give you an undefined. Well, function right here, it won't do anything. So this is like the classic version of JavaScript's function. So you can use this type of functions, or you can say that this type of function existed like when JavaScript was developed. So this is like the classic type of function. It won't give you an error. So if I run this, it won't give you any errors and it will work as expected. So this is from the first line and this is from the second line. Now this is like the first type of function declaration, which is called the simple or the classic function. Now let's see this same function in case of arrows. So there is another way of declaring a function which is called the arrow based declaration. So it's something like this. So you declared a function. Let's see, let me copy this same line from here. It doesn't matter that much. Let's see. This is from arrow function, I will say, just to distinguish between the above. So if I run this right now, it won't give me any error because most of you might be familiar with it. It's already declared and initialized in these lines. So if I use it after the declaration and initialization, I won't get any errors. So let's see. You see, you won't get any errors. Let me clear the screen. So what will happen if you access it before it's even declared? So and at this line, it's not declared yet. So it is declared at this line and initialized at this line, right? So you cannot access it right here from this point. If I run it, it will give you an error. Same error that we got with the let and const. In case of arrow functions, they will also give you an error and say you cannot use the test function before it's initialized. While the simple case, we saw that there was no error. So this was the classic version of JavaScript. This is the new version. And this will give you an error if you try to access it before the variable or the function is already declared or initialized. Now let's see another version of JavaScript, which is the declaration. What is it called? Function expression. Sorry. So there is another version of declaring a JavaScript function, which is something like this. So you say test, and then you declare a function like this. And let's say, for example, I copy the same line and I say I am from. I'm going to change this statement. I'm going to say this is from expression function. So this version of JavaScript functions declaration is called expression function. So or so you can say function expression. So let's try to call this function and see what happens. I'm going to tell you beforehand, this will also give you an error. Why? Because this won't give you an error because this is already declared on this line, so you won't get any error. What I meant was you will get an error if you do like this. Um, Let's try to run it. You see, you got an error. This is same as you are declaring the const, the arrow function. So JavaScript treats two different functions with the same type of way, you can say. And the one type of function, which is this one, which is like the simple and the classic version, you won't get any error from it. So if I have to summarize this, I would do it something like this. So if you are using the simple functions, like as I mentioned before, you won't get any errors, and they will be added to the global scope, and you will be able to access them from anywhere. But if you are trying to use these type of functions and trying to call them before they are initialized, like we saw here in the example, and or here we were calling it even when they were not initialized. Same in this case, you will get an error, and JavaScript will tell you that you cannot use this before they are initialized. So the error will be something like this: cannot access test, which is the function before initialization. So now the third and the last type of hoisting is the class-based hoisting. So for example, if we have a class, so this is a reserved keyword class. So if I have a class called test, and let's say I don't have anything, I don't have anything in class. There's nothing in here, just a simple class, very simple class with a constructor. Even if you want to remove this constructor, it's fine. Just for the you can say for the uh, to remove the confusion, I only have this constructor and nothing else. And I'm going to add just one variable to it, and I'm going to say this dot name is equal to I'm going to write my name over here. So now if I try to create a an object of this class, if I say t1 is equal to new test, if I try to create an object of this, and if I log the name, so if I try to log the name, you all know that nothing will happen. Everything is going to go as expected. Everything will went smooth. There is no error. What if I try to access it even when it's not declared yet? So let's say, for example, if I say something like this: const t2 is equal to new test, right? And I'm going to print this thing. It's the same thing that I did like over here. It's the same thing, right? I just created another object of the test class, and I'm going to see what happens. You got an error. What does it say? Cannot access test before initialization. So with class-based hoisting, it is the same as the as we saw over here. So arrows and function expression. It will give you an error that you cannot access a class before it's declared or initialized. So this is the one of the main concepts of JavaScript. And you might be asked this type of question in an interview, so you need to be prepared for it. They might tell you that you might see that this is not an error because JavaScript is a very, you can say, is a friendly language and it won't get an error. But in reality, you will get an error, right? If you do it like this. Now, there is another way of declaring a class in JavaScript, which is called functional classes. So the way it works is something like this. Uh, you basically say this dot name is equal to. You saw that the name or the color of the test changed because JavaScript knows that this guy is using is trying to create a class from a function. So I need to change. So if I comment this out, you see it's now a normal function. If I uncomment it, you will see that now it's a class. You see this? The function definition and everything changed. So now if I try to create a class of this, an object of this, let's say for example t1. Let me see const. Okay, t1 is equal to new test. So this is the function based class. Don't get confused with the previous method. So if I try to print this, as expected, you guys might know this, you won't get any error. You will get the response, which is Johor, right? What if I do like this? Const t2 is equal to new test, no, new test, right? If I try to print this name now, what will happen? Well, as I said before, this is a simple function, and as we saw before that, with simple function, you don't get any errors because it's you can say it existed in JavaScript for a very long time, and they don't you can say throw error on these type of functions and classes. So you won't get any error. If I run this, you see this is from this one from Johor, and this is from Johor. So try to be careful with these type of hoisting techniques and types. You might get confused as to why you are getting an error while it is already declared. Like in this case, you might think it is already declared and I'm using it like this. Why am I getting an error? In reality, you should know the basic concepts of JavaScript. That JavaScript will throw an error in these type of cases. So if I had to summarize this class-based, you can say hoisting, In the classic version, which is basically declared using the class keyword, you will get an error. So you will get an error that it is not initialized, and please initialize it or use it after initialization or something like this. Cannot access test before initialization. So we were trying to access it right here, and it was initialized over here. So JavaScript is saying you can do that. But with the functional type of classes like this, you can do it. So it won't give you an error, and it will be added to the global scope, and you can access it from anywhere. Even if I go to the top of the class or the bottom of the, sorry, top of the file or bottom of the file, you will still be able to access it. It won't give you an error. So this was a, you can say, a brief and detailed overview of hoisting. And try to look on different documentation, try to practice it on your own as well, try to create different examples, just so you can get familiar with it. It is one of the most important concepts, and it is asked in most of the interviews. And so don't get confused with everything. And as I mentioned before, there are types of uh, hoisting: variable based, then we have the function based, where we have functions, and then the last but not the least, we have the class based. So these were the three types of hoisting. I hope that you get some kind of knowledge and some kind of idea about how hoisting works. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks so much.